FreeMMOStation.com.
Hey guys, what's going on? FreeMMOStation, and yes, today is a solemn day, I would say, when we get to finally look at Black Desert, right? We finally are playing Black Desert, but it's not a free-to-play game anymore. Yeah, but, we covered it so much, and, technically it is free-to-play everywhere else in the world, so there's a little bit of debate if we should even upload this video, but we're just gonna go to it, okay? We were so hyped, and yes, maybe that hype has crashed down, at least for free-to-play players, but, maybe it will go free-to-play later on, and it is free-to-play in, other parts of the world, so there's that. But we are gonna, this is my look, okay, this is my first impression at the Western release of Black Desert Online, okay? So, there's a lot to talk about with this game, and tragically, because of the nature of the game, because it is somewhat like a sandbox game, it's really hard to get into a lot of the details, because it takes so long to actually get into any, one direction of the game, okay? There's, this PvP direction, there's the PvE, there's the trading, the economy, the way that NPCs work with the conversations and the... I don't know, man. It's really crazy and in-depth, but I'm going to try to just sort of, talk about my first impressions of each of these mechanics, okay? So I'm going to introduce you. It's going to be like an overview. It's not a full review, guys. It's a first impressions. I might review the UI, the graphics, but overall, it's not a full review of the game. However, let's go right into it. Let's talk about the mechanics, because that is what is bringing you to this game. I know it. It's how beautiful the game is, of course, the graphics, and when you saw that combat, absolutely, you were stoked to play this game. And I can say, more than any other game, it has the most impactful combat. It has the most fun combat of any game that I've ever played, aside from, Dark Souls, okay? Now, yes, I am including other action RPGs. I'm including action RPGs. I'm including, solo games, campaign games, single-player games, whatever. I'm including those kind of games. And this actually has combat that rivals single-player games. It really does. It's absolutely fantastic. The game looks like it could actually be a single-player game. I mean, it's no Witcher 3, but it definitely contends with, the older Witcher games. So, yeah, it looks really good, and its mechanics feel really good, too. And that's because the abilities... yeah, okay, on the screen you see a 1 through 0, a 1 through 10, whatever. You see the abilities, and you can use those buttons to use your abilities. Even if you just do that, it still feels very visceral, very mechanical, very intense. Or you can also use your button combinations, as in, so one ability, you press 3 to initiate it, or you can press shift left click. So every single ability has an alternate or a combo in order to utilize it. Now, this was kind of being used a lot in a lot of Eastern games, action RPG games, namely Dragon Nest is the one that I played that also utilizes a system somewhat, kind of similar. This game, though, really takes it to the next step, and I really enjoy it. So, for the most part, I will use my number 3 to do that certain ability. It is a charge attack, and this is just for one class. I've only played one class, and I've only seen gameplay from other classes. I haven't really played them, so I just really focused on this class so that I could learn the mechanics. And I want to tell you, I played for maybe a total of 8 hours, 8 hours, guys. Normally for first impressions, I play under an hour. So, I played 8 hours to really get into this game. And at my 8th hour, I was really just then beginning to understand the game, let alone, okay, these mechanics. So the mechanics of your character feel really good, and I want to imagine for every class it is very different. Okay, so for the Berserker, it's going to play totally different than the Ranged Archer, especially because the game uses an aimed system. You do aim, you do have to aim your shots, everything is a skill shot. It works with an action camera setting, very similar to the new Guild Wars 2, with Dragon Nest, with Vindictus, with these games that are actually aimed, and probably Terra as well. But if I had to really describe it, the best way to describe it, the most quickly way to describe the combat, it would have to be take Terra's combat, okay guys? And then take Blade and Soul, and just kind of mix those two together, and you have something that's actually very similar. Blade and Soul has a lot of abilities that are combo-oriented, and that they physically move your character as well. So you might have a punch, but it's going to kind of lock your controls. You can no longer do WASD, so you're not floating around like Guild Wars 2, you're not floating around like World of Warcraft. You are locked in place for at least a millisecond, so that your character is moved by the ability. It's not standstill, but your abilities actually do move you. They have momentum with them, which gives it a really nice feeling, especially when you chain them together or use them to move you more than you could possibly if you were just free WASDing, okay? So that's why I really like Black Desert, because you have some amazing dodges, and every class has their own different unique animations and different unique ways of dodging. So for instance, the Sorceress has not exactly a blink, but it's kind of like a shadowy teleport, phasing kind of ability, and you can use this to really dodge abilities very well. So she is super squishy, and she needs to be really mobile. And I really love this concept of the sorceress, where she is a magic-using brawler fighter. Like, she does have some ranged, she has some very good AoE close-up abilities, but she's very, like, you know, middle, like right in the middle. Like, she's not full ranged, like the sorcerer, or the mage, or the wizard, whatever. She is, like, a nice combination, where you need to be in, out, ducking and weaving, and, like, you're just very mobile, but at the same time, you can do some really explosive attacks if you're given the time to just sit there and wail on them. It's really awesome. You really feel like a fighter, like a brawler. And even though it's a magic class, it's the most visceral and most, like, I don't know, physical class that I've ever played in any game. Ever. And it feels amazing. I really enjoyed it very, very much. It almost feels like Bloodborne. You know how fast Bloodborne is? How you are moving so quickly, dodging left and right, and it really kind of feels like that, actually. So, very much of a fun time, at least with that class. I didn't get to play the other classes, but I imagine they have their own unique game feel as well. And now the monsters. Okay, normally in MMO games, at least the modern games, you get these like little hit indicators on the ground, like WildStar, Guild Wars 2. You have these little indicators, whatever, colored little sections on the ground that showcase where the AoE is going to take place. You don't have that in this game, and currently it seems like a lot of attacks that shouldn't hit you do hit you, but there is sort of like this respected AoE, so you can't actually dodge attacks and everything. You can't actually go to the side or behind a monster. You do more damage from behind as well. And the monsters are going to do more damage based on their positioning, and that's really the core of the game. You don't have a holy trinity of healer, damage dealer, tank. You might have more like a somewhat tank. You can have a dodge tank, like an aggro tank that dodges. You might have just a pure DPS, maybe, if you just want to do that. But for the most part, the holy trinity is broken, and instead you have a positioning system, okay? So depending on where you are standing next to a monster, and especially how your party is oriented with each other, less damage will be done, or your party will do more damage. And like, it's like this really complicated system that I honestly can't really review. I can't really talk about it, but it does exist. And I only played as solo, but I want to talk to you guys about that. My solo experience, even with a super difficult and squishy, very mechanical class, I was still able to, I would say, very conveniently just move through the game. I'm not saying the game is easy. It's definitely been hiked up in difficulty since the Korean release. But I was saying that a good player like myself, who was really investing time into learning the mechanics of my class, and you know, I'm just overall a very enthusiastic player. I really enjoy playing these games. So I got really good with my class really fast, learned the combos, and I was rewarded for that. At the start of the game, though, my first experience, it was like really hella hard, and I was getting my ass kicked by just normal mobs. However, later on in the game, as I got really good, I became rewarded for that, and I was able to take on hordes of enemies at one time, when normally, as a normal player, you would not be able to do that. Maybe certain classes will be able to do it easier, but I was able to just like mow through monsters because I was really mechanical, I was really strategic. You know, I would dodge in, I would kite them with my blink ability, and I would like Kamehameha them, and like I'd stun them, and then I'd jump in and do a flurry of attacks, AoE attacks, and like I was able to really utilize all of my skills, you know, strategy, tactics, and mechanics, in order to kill just even like not boss monsters. They were essentially trash mobs, and I really like that. It's actually fun to grind trash mobs. And now I'm going to segue and say that you really don't have dungeons. There's no dungeons, there's no raiding. The game is essentially, the end game is PvP. It's all about PvP, it's all about player economy. It is a sandbox game. But early on, it's very linear, and maybe the sandpark like elements might lead you to believe that there are dungeons, that it is going to actually be like a theme park or roller coaster ride, like, you know, WildStar, Guild Wars 2, World of Warcraft, but you're not going to have that. You're not going to have that experience, you're not going to have that campaign experience. It's all very much open world in a sandbox, and yes, you have a huge amount of emphasis on interacting with NPCs, but your interaction with the NPCs and the worlds within it is just to kind of get you started. The true endgame and the true game is PvP, guild versus guild warfare, owning different territories, and yeah, the player economy, and grinding resources, basically. So it essentially is just like Albion Online. It essentially is just like these other sandbox games. It's just, its presentation in the beginning of the game is a little bit more theme park, kind of similar to Arcade. Actually, I would probably say that this game directly competes with Arcade, and overall, I really just fucking loved Black Desert. I want to say that I don't, because there's so many things that are annoying, and I am going to get to those, like, right now, but I just want to say, inherently, for some reason, I'm really enjoying the game, despite the faults that I'm about to claim right here, okay? So first off, as a new player, the UI the amount of information that's thrown at you, the mechanics of your class, let alone like the whole world itself, the monsters, the amount of knowledge and lore that gets thrown on you. It's just all like so much information. And yeah, the UI is like a clusterfuck of like insanity. Now, as I'm playing the game and I've gotten used to some of these like different UI elements, it starts to make sense. But at the very beginning, you're just gonna see like little like lines of light and swirly circles and all this crazy shit on your screen. Don't get me wrong, the game looks good. It's just I really wish they introduced each like element of the UI, each element of the game, just like step by step. However, you're just like, as soon as you log in, you're bombarded with just a ton of information from all of the game. And it's just really hard to kind of understand where you should go from there. So I suggest maybe you should actually watch some videos, or just blindly like actually follow either follow the quests, like read the quests, and if like you're like most people though, then just blindly just follow the quests. Just like click on the map, auto run with T, and your character will run there and do it. Just do that for a little bit until you get to a high enough level and you start to kind of fall into the game. That's what I did. But it's really hard to learn all the different elements as the game is trying to introduce it to you. Even though it's at an okay pace, it's just like there's so much stuff that's totally geared for the actual end game that you probably don't need to learn about immediately. Like, you get a donkey, and the donkey doesn't really provide you with anything. You actually move faster without the donkey, and sure, I guess the donkey can hold some items, but at that point, you're not really farming that many items anyways. And so the donkey will actually impede you, because it's actually awkward. It turns really slow, and you have to get on and off it really slow to talk to people. Overall, that's just really awkward. You learn about storage, you learn about fishing and gathering and stuff, but you don't really learn how you can use that on the market. You don't know how to sell it to people. Like, I don't know. It's just you're introduced to things that it probably isn't a little bit inappropriate. I'm not sure. It's really hard to tell. I'm in the starting to get into the actual mid game. I'm actually getting into the game now. I just feel that my very first experience wasn't as great as it could have been, because I'm only having more and more fun, and I just kind of wish they introduced you with like some bigger boss battles. I wish they cut out some of the story, or like actually had voice acting in the story. I don't know if they will actually include voice acting later on, but right now it's just like they don't really focus on any one component of the game, and they try to shove all the game's mechanics, everything that the game has on you as a new player, and it's just too much. It's just too much. I don't even know how to describe it. It's just too fucking much. Of course, through hours and hours of gameplay, you begin to slowly digest it. However, they probably should have made it a little bit more digestible in the first place. Maybe they should have just introduced you to the combat, threw a boss at you, threw hordes of enemies at you, really forced you to learn your class. And then from there, we start to learn crafting and everything. We start to learn the economy. But they kind of do everything all at once, and this is basically going to be your gameplay. It's going to feel like, okay, cool, boom, there's some combat. That was cute, I guess. But you have like 5 minutes of combat, and then like 20 minutes of just literally walking around. 10 more minutes of just talking to people. And if you don't like reading quests, if you don't like reading texts, this game actually might not be for you. It's really helpful to learn. Like, actually read the text. It kind of gives you, I mean, yes, there are a lot of UI elements to tell you exactly where to go for certain quests, but if you want to really dig into the game and learn like everything that you can about it to actually be the most efficient at grinding, learn where monsters are, what they could possibly drop, you're going to want to read the words on the screen. And that way you actually learn how to play the game. Like, there are certain NPCs that you can actually trade items with. And if you don't like really read it, you're gonna kind of miss that component like I did until like just now. So you can actually rent different items from them to help you leveling. You can trade them different items. So if you farm like maybe the goblins and they drop a pickaxe, you can give this guy 80 pickaxes and he will give you like an item. Or you can go to someone else and give them imp staffs or whatever, and they give you a armor piece. And like you can actually like literally trade items. You trade different items around these areas. So a lot of it is just grinding. It's not going out and killing a boss. You get a reward for that single boss. It's like everything is optional. Everything is absolutely optional. It really feels sandboxy, even though it's also theme parky. I think it's done in a more appropriate way than Arcade, because Arcade was really, really linear. But then again, at the same time, Arcade taught you everything in like an order. Though they did do it all at the beginning, and I don't know if it was really, I don't know. Arcade is Arcade, whatever. But Black Desert throws everything at you all at once. But if you have the patience to dig through it, and if this is the style of game that you're interested in, it could be fun, but I just feel like as a first impressions, you don't know what style of game it is. You have no idea what this game has in store for you, and that could be good, that could be bad. For me, I was just entranced by the mystery of it all, kind of. I as a reviewer, I wanted to actually know the game. I didn't want to just say, oh, I didn't understand it, it was too hard of a first impressions. I didn't want to be a little bitch, okay? So the fact that I didn't understand it was kind of fun for me in particular, but I think for most people it's not. So they might think it is a theme park game. They might think it's a full sandbox game, but the truth is it's a weird, awkward combination of the two, and it's really hard for me to give my first impressions because I'm still kind of confuddled. Like, still kind of don't exactly know. All I know is that I'm in some awkward point where I need to gain knowledge of the world so that I can access more quests and talk to different people. And yeah, I guess that's something that we should probably talk about. It's actually a huge thing about the game, is that there are a lot of quests that aren't really barriered by levels per se. It's more like you need to actually gain knowledge. Your character needs to gain knowledge of the world, or specifically the areas of the world that might interest that certain NPC. So if there's somebody who is a little bit more sophisticated, you yourself need to become sophisticated to talk to them. Some people, maybe they're a miner. You need to learn about the minerals around the area. Let's see, like it's probably the goblins or the imps or whatever that are mining around the area. You need to kill those guys a bunch of times so you can learn about them. But overall, you need to learn about the certain area that the NPC's in. And then he will start to talk to you maybe more about the different, minerals. You'll be able to have conversations with them. It's almost like a mini game you play where you share information and you just kind of have a conversation with them. And then maybe that unlocks a new quest. And then you can go and get a new reward. Maybe it unlocks a new, trade. Maybe you can rent a new item. Maybe you can trade a new item. And basically, you need to go and learn about the world. And you do this through fighting monsters, for instance. First time you fight a monster, you can see a health bar, but it doesn't go down. Okay, for instance, if you kill enough of these monsters, sometimes it's just one, sometimes it's a lot more than one, you then learn their health bar, and the next time you fight them, you'll actually see their health tick down, among other things. And so it's like you got to learn about the whole world by actually participating in the whole world and everything that you do. So Black Desert, maybe in a way the design is kind of on purpose, right? They throw everything at you because you need to do everything. You can't really specialize too much, at least as far as I'm concerned. To get started in the game, you need to do everything. Do a little bit of grinding here, do a little bit of grinding there, get some materials, talk to these NPCs, do the quests. It's not like a sandbox game where you can just totally bypass the quests. I don't think you're going to have a good time then. You can't just totally bypass crafting. You can't just totally bypass trading. You can't just go and do dungeons. Like, you actually do need to go and at least participate a little bit in all the areas of the game to really thrive and exist. However, there are some ways to automate some of those things that you don't want to do. For instance, you don't have to go out gathering all nonstop. You can actually hire workers to do that for you. Yeah, so it's kind of almost like Garrison-ish, but these workers actually exist in real time, and it's pretty interesting to see. You can hire workers to go gather materials for you. You can go hire, you can hire workers to get different kinds of materials. You can have different workers in different areas. You can sell items, and the trading posts are regional-based, okay? So if you want to trade, you need to actually connect the different nodes, and you need to have different contribution points added into these different nodes, and they need to be connected. So if there's two major cities totally separated, then you need to actually connect those in order to trade between the two. And there's just like all this complicated nonsense with the map. If you guys look at the map right now, it's just, wow, man, there's just so much stuff. There's so much information to really look at and to digest, to consume. It's ridiculous, and I'm only just now learning it, like I really am. So you need to actually connect these different nodes. You need to spend these contribution points. You get these contribution points by, playing the game around the area. Take your contribution points, level those things up. And one thing that's cool is that if you contribute to a certain area, or these things are called nodes, if you contribute to it and you spend your points, your stamina points or vigor points on them, then you can actually get better rewards from those areas. So what's really important for the end game is guilds want to own these areas so they can tax these, and then they also all put in their contribution and their vigor points so that they kind of get higher rates of drop, and then they grind those areas. So some areas are going to be more contested than others. You're going to see more of a population of people unless a guild maintains it. Right now, since the servers are brand new, we don't really see a guild influence at all. So there's that. But it is actually very important to learn to grind, and which area of focus you want for grinding. If it's slaying monsters, if it's mining resources, whatever. for whatever you are lacking, you can actually have automated processes for that. And there's actually a lot about the game that is kind of automated. The combat absolutely is not fucking automated. It is amazing. However, there are some, menial tasks that can be automated. Like the fishing is potentially automatic. Of course, not efficient. There is auto walking and auto pathing, but of course, absolutely not efficient. It's so much better to actually go parkour around, which is actually possible in this game. You can go totally Assassin's Creed. In fact, if you guys have ever played Assassin's Creed, the engine of this game really reminds me of that. You can actually climb up, you can actually pull yourself up onto rooftops and run around and jump around and do all that crazy stuff. You actually bump into people too. But there are some things that are automated. Of course, it's not efficient, but since the game does have such a downtime of action because you're doing so much grinding, and then in between grinding, you are trading and delivering things, or you're going off and hiring these workers, you're doing a lot of things that aren't combat related. That happens in sandbox games. It's just, in a lot of sandbox games, you can choose to just focus on combat. In Black Desert, it doesn't really quite work like that. Maybe later on, but definitely starting out, you absolutely have to be a jack of all trades. You have to do everything in the game, and then from there, maybe potentially, but so far, it just seems, I don't know, to me, for someone who really likes combat, it just kind of feels a little bit boring. Just a little bit, because of, I just like the action combat, and that's why I wanted to play Black Desert. But I'm surprised by how much you are just seriously walking around. I guess maybe that's a fault of the genre, right? Every sandbox game that I've ever played is just a tremendous amount of walking around. And yes, Black Desert, you are going to be walking around a ton. Okay. However, it can be worth it. It can be worth it. You get lots of loot. I guess you get cooler gear. You look cooler. But really, I think the big end game for Black Desert is owning different areas and customizing your houses, your residences. Because yes, you can customize your residences. There is player housing. It exists in real time, and anybody can visit. And it's all cool and fine and dandy. But right now, there's not too much customization with the character. There are dyes, but I don't think there's any transmogrification like in Guild Wars 2. But I don't know if the dyes are as complicated as Guild Wars 2 either. But so yeah, the end game is, I'm not really sure what the exact reward is other than customizing your residences and actually owning territories. I'm not exactly sure what digital good that you're getting. In World of Warcraft and Guild Wars 2, you get some really wicked armors, you get some really wicked legendary weapons that are really showy. In this game, I'm not really sure what the reward is. I'm not really sure what you can really show off to everyone. But getting to the end game, the journey to it is pretty fun. If you can get past your first impressions, the mid game is really where this game exists. There's not really an end game other than PvP. There's no dungeons or anything like that, but I think it's worth. I definitely think it would be a great free-to-play game. Absolutely. It seems like it works as a free-to-play game. Buying $60 for a lack of endgame, I don't know. I mean, it could. $50 or $60. It worked for Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 2 had no endgame, and it worked. The mid-game was freaking fantastic, but it also had a really, really engaging first impressions. So Black Desert, you got to put in a lot of work and a lot of time to get back. I don't know if it's worth it. If it's a free-to-play game, that makes sense. But as a buy-to-play, I don't know. I would like it to go free to play. That's what I would like. So I'm going to end the first impressions there. I know I kind of ranted about a whole lot of nonsense, but seriously, the game is very complicated. Maybe some would say convoluted, but if you can get past that, it's a fun game. Thanks for listening to me. I'm Skyline Shore with FreeMMOStation. This was not a free MMO. Everywhere else in the world it is, but it's buy to play, tragically. But maybe we'll see it go free to play. Either ways, I'm done with the video. Peace out, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.